We've talked on and on about the guards in the free agent market, but what about centers and bigs? What's out there for that? Plus, Zach LaVine and an NBA Finals look ahead on today's Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is June 2nd. It will be June 3rd, 2024. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, we talked a lot about the guards and the wings and filling that need, but what about centers? We'll talk about why that might be something for the Magic to consider and how much it's going to cost. And we're going to get to that plus a whole lot more on today's episode of Locked On Magic. But first, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day, no matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when you upload. We truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Remember, there's a great Locked On podcast covering every single team in the NBA. Just search for Locked On and the team you're looking for, the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So we've talked a lot in preparation for free agency about what the guard room looks like. You know, obviously, I think a lot of us came out of the playoffs, came out of the series with the Cleveland Cavaliers saying the Magic need a ball handler. Paolo Banchero freaking came out to the Washington Post and said, we need a table setter, someone that's just going to get us organized, get me easy shots, get Franz easy shots, just make things easier for this team. And we're going to have this discussion, but I want to make sure it's abundantly clear. The two things the Magic need more than anything else, if the Magic have just baseline goal for this offseason, it's get another ball handler, get another creator, get a point guard, a more truer point guard, in my opinion, and add shooting. That means shooting improvement internally. That means shooting improvement externally. And there are plenty of those, whether it's KCP, whether it's Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, whether it's Malik Beasley, whether it's Malik Monk, whether it's Klay Thompson. There are a lot, Tyus Jones. There are D'Angelo Russell. There are a lot of shooting options. There are a lot of point guard options out there. And we'll see ultimately what the Magic decide. But you probably also remember that we've talked a lot about trades. And this is a point that I make. It's a point our friend Keith Smith of Spot Track always makes. The Magic have a lot of cap room, but that doesn't mean they have to spend it on free agency. They can also spend it in trades. So we had that episode a few weeks ago with Mike Richmond of Locked On Blazers talking about Anthony Simons. And you probably noticed a name popped up in that. And a name keeps popping up in every trade scenario. So if the Magic are going to make sure they get a guard, and that is the number one priority, it, in all likelihood, will cost them Wendell Carter. Say what you want about Wendell Carter. He is a quality starting center in the league. Injuries aside, he is excellent defensively. He's a good floor spacer. He's a solid shooter, defends his position well. There are reasons to believe the Magic need an upgrade at center, but it is still a second order problem. The first thing the Magic have to find is the guard and the shooting. But if it costs Wendell Carter, then they got to ask themselves, well, what does the center market look like? Because you don't want to get caught going into the season without a starting center. I didn't love the Jonathan Isaac experiment at center. I'm very much on the record about that. I think it looked bad. I'm very much on the record of believing that Jonathan Isaac is not a center or a backup center, certainly not for longer than a few minutes. I'm not against Isaac at center lineups, but like the Golden State Warriors lineup with Draymond Green, you only play it sparingly. And it's something that needs more work and is probably more matchup dependent than anything else. And so, yes, the guard position is the most important, but what does the center market look like? Can the Magic solve both these problems? Or, maybe it's a problem, maybe it's not. But can the Magic solve both of these needs at once? If they're going to trade Wendell Carter, they're going to need a center. And I will continue to say this. I've got a few ideas. I don't know if you'll like them or not. But the Magic probably still need to spend one of their roster spots. They need to replace Goga Bitadze. If Bitadze is going to walk, if he's gone, they need to find a backup center who is capable of starting 15 to 20 games a year, because Wendell Carter is going to miss 15 to 20 games a year. It's just how it is at this point. So what does the center market look like? Not good. Not good at all. Jake Fisher of Yahoo Sports came out with an article kind of assessing the center market. I believe Saturday was when it came out. It might have been Friday. And essentially said, your two options are Isaiah Hartenstein and Nick Claxton. And both of them appear to be commanding a contract somewhere between $20 to $25 million per year. Now, we've talked about this a little bit before, but the New York Knicks are very limited in what they can offer Isaiah Hartenstein, because they only have early bird rights to him. I believe they can only offer him a contract starting at $16.5 or $17 million per year. So if Hartenstein is going to get $20 million a year, and I think that is a very safe bet, 25 a year is, I think, on the high end, but not impossible with the competition here. If he's going to get that, the Knicks are priced out, and the Knicks would have to do some work to get to a number where they could offer him that much. And that would be before dealing with OG Anunoby, who they're going to have to spend on as well. The Knicks are in a bit of a pickle when it comes to Isaiah Hartenstein. And look, his numbers don't look impressive, but he's a solid rim protector, a really versatile, a really good defender. Not versatile in the way Wendell is, but can hold his own. I think he's an excellent passer. I think he's a better shooter than people give him credit for. There's a reason why I traded him in last year's Locked On mock draft. I've had plenty of people say I've been vindicated on that deal that everyone hated at the time. But Hartenstein would be a really good center option, as would Nick Claxton, who's an excellent defender, much better, a better rim protector, better shot blocker by the numbers, a little bit less versatile offensively, in my opinion. But it sounds like Brooklyn's main priority this offseason is to bring back Nick Claxton. Once the finals ends, they can start negotiating the extension with him, and they could have that done before June 30th. So look, the Magic are going to know, the Magic are going to know who's going where by the time this happens. So let's not pretend otherwise. But after that, that is about it for the center market. You got Jonas Valanciunas, who I don't think he's a starting center in the league anymore. He played only 24 minutes per game this season. He's kind of an earthbound center. He's big, he's tough, he rebounds well. But, he doesn't space the floor very well. He's not super versatile defensively. I don't think he's a player the Magic would chase after. And then that's it for starting level centers. You might as well stick to Goga Bitadze at that point. Now, again, I think Goga's very good. I think Goga deserves an opportunity to go play backup center somewhere. He's not replacing Mo Wagner at this point. We had that competition. Mo Wagner won it. There are other options the Magic could chase after. There's a few veterans there, but there are no other starting level centers. That's why when we did that mock trade with Locked On Blazers and did that episode, I pitched adding Robert Williams to the deal, because Robert Williams at least gives the Magic a good center option, a capable floor spacer, an excellent defender on the perimeter, a solid shot blocker, someone who can fill all those roles. But yes, very, very injury prone and missed pretty much the entire season last year. As he struggled with those injuries and has struggled with those injuries in Boston too. So you'd still have the problem of you would need to go out and find a third center, a starting capable third center to help you out. This is all to say that the center market this summer complicates a lot of the decisions the Magic are going to have to make this year. Because again, everything is running on the same track. And I know you could say the Magic could draft Kel'el Ware, they could draft Yves Missy. Those players are fine. They're not starting ready, especially for a team that wants to compete like the Magic. I'd rather keep Wendell Carter if that's the choice. But therein lies the problem. And that's, again, why we're probably hunting for guards in free agency, because if a trade is going to cost the Magic Wendell Carter, the options to replace him are much smaller, are much more difficult. Or you're going to have to construct that trade to get your replacement for Wendell Carter, because there are some indications that the Oklahoma City Thunder could be chasing after Isaiah Hartenstein, or the Detroit Pistons could chase after Isaiah Hartenstein. There is going to be competition for the few centers out there in the market. And that's only going to drive the price up. The Knicks are probably losing Isaiah Hartenstein because there are enough teams driving that price up that they're not going to be able to match, or they're not going to have the time to be able to put together the pieces to match, to get rid of the pieces they need to match that contract and still retain their flexibility. That's going to be the struggle for the New York Knicks, and why Hartenstein is going to get a fat payday. He will get 80 plus million. He may get 90. 100 I still think is a little high, but it wouldn't surprise me in this market, in this atmosphere, because there's just so few quality centers available. And yeah, I don't know why Detroit needs a center, but Detroit's going to throw their money at somebody. Oklahoma City definitely needs a center. Oklahoma City does not want to play Chet Holmgren at center again. They need a center. Isaiah Hartenstein would be an interesting option for them. That creates competition. That means someone's going to have to pay a higher price. And that means if the Magic want to trade Wendell Carter, to get the guy the Magic need, they have to trade Wendell Carter. That means they're paying a lot more for center than maybe anyone anticipated. It's a very, very tight market for centers, in free agency at least. It's going to be really, really tricky for the Magic to pull something off like that and get the kind of player that they're looking for. But that's what the center free agency market looks like. And that's going to be one of the interesting pieces of this puzzle for Orlando. Coming up, though, we're going to go back to talking about star trades and why they're so difficult and why it probably isn't the best idea quite yet. But one rumor keeps popping up. People keep trying to make something happen. Well, since our friends at Locked On Bulls brought it up, we will address it here. Zach LaVine back in the news. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, it's time for a quick word from our friends over at LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals who are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. I know as a job seeker, LinkedIn is one of my favorite job boards to look at. I know that it has connections to all the biggest companies in the world. And now it is available. Now that power and that resource is available to you and your small business. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make that process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring, so why not you? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We want to thank you for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Now be sure to check out the Locked On Sports Day 24/7 streaming channel. There's so much going on in the world of sports now. NBA Finals on the horizon, Stanley Cup Final on the horizon, WNBA. I don't know if they have NWSL, but they should get NWSL because NWSL is popping now with the Orlando Pride sitting on top. And you want the best analysis of all your, and MLB, of course. You want the best analysis of all your favorite sports and the biggest sports stories of the day. That's where the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel comes in. It's programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news. Streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, it's your team every day. So popping up here on my social media, on wherever I get my news and everything else, I do keep tabs on all of our Locked On Podcast Networks and all of our Locked On friends. And I want to, encourage you, if you're interested in any team, John Corrales of Locked On Celtics, and we'll get to some final stuff here in a minute, but John Corrales of Locked On Celtics, Nick Angstad of Locked On Mavericks do an incredible job with their teams. John Corrales is frankly the Celtics writer. I am the Magic version of him. He is not the Celtics version of me. I am the Magic version of him. And he dwarfs me, frankly. You will be ready for the NBA Finals. No matter what I can tell you about the NBA Finals, you will be ready for the NBA Finals by listening to them. But our friends at Locked On Bulls had an interesting headline on their episode yesterday and, pitched and examined potential trade between the Orlando Magic and the Chicago Bulls involving Zach LaVine. Now, I have seen several kind of blogger types, Bleacher Report come up with a lot of things saying, well, if the Bulls are going to trade Zach LaVine, the Magic would be a good spot for him to land. And I've seen them try and put together deals to make a Zach LaVine to Orlando deal happen. And I'm sure some of you have talked about it too. It's impossible. Frankly, I couldn't find any hard reporting suggesting that the Magic are interested or that something is imminent. But look, it's hard to deny that there should be some interest. If Chicago is preparing to break their team apart a little bit, if they are preparing to make a change and kind of flip their script a little bit, trading Zach LaVine to Orlando is not the worst idea in the world. He averaged 19.5 points per game last year, shot 45.2% from the floor, 34.9% from three on 6.8 attempts per game, 85.4 free throw percentage, 5.2 rebounds, 3.9 assists. We all know firsthand what a spurty scorer he can be, how quickly he can get hot, how quickly he can change games. Pretty much each of the last 2 years and probably three times that the Magic have faced the Bulls with LaVine playing, he has single-handedly clawed Chicago back into the game. The issue, of course, is that he has a long injury history. He played only 25 games last year, had another kind of major knee issue that kept him out of the lineup. He's coming off seasons where he played 77, 67, 58, 60, 63, 63 games, so he's played more than 70 games just three times in his career. One of them was in 2023. He is a two-time NBA All-Star. In 2023, when he played 77 games, he averaged 24.8 points per game, shot 48.5% from the floor, 37.5% from threes, career 38.2% three-point shooter, 4.2 assists per game, 4.5 rebounds per game. When he was in Minnesota, they tried him at point guard a little bit. Essentially what I'm saying is, yes, Zach LaVine checks a lot of boxes for the Magic offensively. He's an excellent shooter. He is another scorer and playmaker and creator. He is someone that can ease the scoring load off of Paolo and Franz when needed. But he may be at a stage in his career where he can kind of take a step back. The biggest impediment, of course, is A, the injury issue, and B, his salary. He has got 3 more years left on his contract, including a player option in 2027 that will pay him $43 million in 2025, $46 million in 2026, and then $49 million in a little bit less than $49 million off that team option in 2027. So essentially, if the Magic were to trade for Zach LaVine, and this is the part they didn't really talk about on Locked On Bulls, the Magic would be committing themselves to 3 years of Zach LaVine. Honestly, that's more the trade than getting Zach LaVine, because when LaVine's healthy, yes, he would really help this team. And even though, even playing with Nikola Vucevic and DeMar DeRozan, he still found his ways to pick his spots and find himself. But therein lies the problem. To get to that number, the Magic could absorb a lot of it into their cap room, but they can't absorb all of it. They would have to give up something. And the deal that the Locked On Bulls crew came up with centered on, I believe it was I believe they centered it on Mo Wagner, Joe Ingles, and the 18th pick, which, that's 11 plus that's $19 million. So you're absorbing more than $20 million into your cap room, which the Magic could do. They're going to go out and sign a $23 million a year guy. But if the Magic are going to make a trade, my preference is to get that number down to about $15 million. So you can still go out and sign another $20 million guy, maybe another 10, and maybe another $8 million guy into your room exception, which is the idea that Keith Smith had with Mo Wagner. The math just becomes very, very difficult. Because again, I think, when we get to this offseason, we're talking about this offseason. Yes, the instinct is right here to say that the Magic are in a win now mode. They want to win. We're done with rebuilding. We're done with kind of hedging these bets. The winning window is open. The Magic have to be doing things to improve their roster, improve their standing in the Eastern Conference, and set themselves up, especially now with, contracts starting to come due, set themselves up for future trades. Personally, I don't think Zach LaVine does that. And this is why I've been kind of pitching a more moderate approach, where I don't think the Magic spend all their money on one guy. This summer is more about arranging the chess pieces. It's about, adding a starting caliber guard next to Jalen Suggs. So you have that shooting and you have that. That's priority number one. I'm not going to sit here and pretend otherwise. That's going to cost you somewhere between probably $22 and $25 million a year. The Magic have 32, probably they really have $40 million in cap room. Let's just assume they're going to waive Joe Ingles at this point. If they have $40 million of cap room, they're going to spend half of it on one player. And that's okay. That's fine. Then they will have another $10 to $15 million to spend elsewhere. Again, that's why I think trying to get that trade, if you're going to make a trade, get that trade number down to 10 to 15 and then spend the 20 to 25 million on an Isaiah Hartenstein, on Nick Claxton, on someone else to bring into the roster. That's kind of the sweet spot for me. And so this is why I'm more for a moderate approach. If you are acquiring Zach LaVine or acquiring a player like him that's going to cost a lot of money, like Paul George, like Klay Thompson, you are essentially committing yourself to that team and you lose all your flexibility. And the Magic are not in a place where they should completely lose their flexibility. Now, obviously, they got to spend. And this is the summer to spend. We're not going to pretend otherwise. This is the summer where they got to spend because Franz Wagner's about to make $35 million a year at minimum, if not the full max of $38, $39 million a year. That's coming. The finances are going to get very weird very, very quickly here and very foreign because, again, the cap is just about to just balloon like crazy and balloon exponentially here over the next several years. The Magic need to maintain some flexibility to make these trades, to make these deals, and to say, okay, this plan didn't work. We still need to be good. You don't want to get trapped with a bad roster. That's what happened to Chicago. Chicago got trapped with a bad roster. As they said on Locked On Bulls, the Bulls built the Magic's roster, and we thank them for it. Honestly, I don't know why Chicago would call Jeff Weltman. I don't know why Chicago would, or Arturas Karstanovas would answer the phone from Jeff Weltman. The Magic don't want to kind of be stuck like the Bulls are, where their only option is to trade some of their stars for either swap them out for another star or trade them for kind of pieces to kind of reset themselves. We don't want to do that. So I think that it's key for the Magic to exit this offseason still with a little bit of flexibility. And I just don't think you can do that with Zach LaVine. I agree. He checks a lot of boxes offensively. I don't think he's as bad defensively. He's obviously been part of good defensive teams in Chicago, so you bring him into a good defensive culture. He's not going to take too much away from that. But the injury history, the salary, that just makes it really tough for me to believe. And again, constructing a deal becomes really tough. Are they going to take, is Chicago going to take Wendell Carter back? As our friends at Locked On Bulls said, the team that's acquiring Wendell Carter is already thinking about where they're going to trade him. That's unfortunately kind of where Wendell Carter is right now. Are they going to take him back? Again, I talked a little bit earlier about, okay, what happens with the center spot after that? I don't know. But this is the problem with trades is the Magic's options to trade are very, very limited. They're not trading Jonathan Isaac. Sorry, kids. They're not trading Jonathan Isaac. Cole Anthony is 4-year deal. It's just starting a 4-year deal coming off his worst, a season where he was fine. He played well, but his numbers were really poor. So is anyone going to be taking him? Wendell Carter is coming off of a really bad year. It's going to, the Magic have draft capital to spend and they should spend, they should be willing to spend some of it. But it's tough. And I don't think that Zach LaVine quite does it. It's not that I wouldn't like the aggression. And look, LaVine would help this team tremendously. That's it. That's the game. That's your team. Are you going to win a championship in the next 3 years with that? And what happens when LaVine's contract comes up? Are you looking to move him again? Well, the value is going to be a little bit different, but are you looking to move him again? Or are you going to let him walk and now you don't have the full $40 million the full $49 million he frees up? It's tricky. It's really, really tricky, but I don't think the Magic would pursue Zach LaVine. Monday is our big NBA picture idea day. So we'll talk a little bit about what we're expecting to see in the NBA Finals now that the matchup is set. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, it's time for a quick word from our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With more than 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home some huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. So here we are. We have finally made it, and with what little time we have left on today's show, let's talk bigger NBA picture here. Let's get to the bigger NBA picture. The NBA Finals are finally here, and we'll talk a little bit more about what we should be watching as Magic fans in the NBA Finals on Thursday's episode of Locked On Magic before Game 1. But I want to touch briefly on what we're seeing here in the league and kind of bigger picture stuff as we begin to look and examine this series between the Celtics and the Mavericks. I will probably give my prediction for the series on Thursday, but again, I would encourage all of you, if you want to stay up to date on the NBA Finals, either check out the Locked On Sports Day 24/7 streaming channel, because both Locked On Celtics and Locked On Mavericks will be there. But if you want to stay up to date with the best preview and analysis of the NBA Finals, check out John Corrales of Locked On Celtics. John's a good friend of the show here. Big Magic fan too. But John knows that Celtics team inside and out. Give his show a listen for the Celtics perspective. Nick Angstad of Locked On Mavericks does a fantastic job covering the Dallas Mavericks. Give his show a listen from Locked On Mavericks. You will be more than covered in a way that I'm not going to be able to touch here. But I do want to talk about some bigger storylines overall. First of all, the Celtics are the 1 seed, the dominant team in the league. But I think John Hollinger of The Athletic did a really good job painting this picture. For the first time, I think it's since the 1980s or 1970s, the NBA will have 6 different champions. It is exceedingly rare for the league to not have a dynasty. And obviously the Golden State Warriors dynasty is coming to pass. Maybe we define dynasties differently in the salary cap age and now in the second apron age, where it's really hard to keep teams together. But frankly, if you look at the standings, if you look at the way the league is composed, we are in a new age of parity. And the Dallas Mavericks were the 5 seed. They finished with 50 wins, only 3 more wins than the Orlando Magic, same seeding as the Magic. The Dallas Mavericks were the 5 seed. The Minnesota Timberwolves were the 3 seed. The Indiana Pacers were the 6 seed. We had a very, very strange conference finals with teams that were not expected to be there. Teams that surprised everyone to reach their spot, to reach this spot, to reach this level. I think it's a good thing ultimately for the NBA, because, I used to say in the 2000s, like, the NBA is the most predictable league in the world and in major sports. We can pick out the 3 or 4 teams that probably are going to win the championship before the season starts. And so I would tell people, like, the NBA is not about the winner. We kind of have an idea of who's going to win the championship pretty early on in the season, if not in the preseason. It's about the journey. It's about the random game on a Tuesday night when someone pops off for 45 or 50. It's the stories and the buffoonery that happens along the way. The NBA is very much a league about the journey. But now that we've had an 8 seed Miami Heat make the NBA Finals, we had a 7 seed Los Angeles Lakers in the Western Conference Finals last year. It's been 2 straight years of parity, of a belief that any team can make it if they get into the field. That was kind of the big lesson I took from the Miami Heat. And obviously Miami's a little bit different. The veteran team kind of stuck their way in, but none of us would have been surprised if, Philadelphia were healthy, if they snuck in as the 7 seed and paraded to the championship. That team was the second best team in the East if not for Joel Embiid's injury. And obviously he was playing hurt in playoffs and the Knicks beat him. This is, the big thing that Hollinger wrote in his piece on The Athletic is that it really feels like if you can get into the second round, anything can happen. And look, Boston paraded to the finals. They've lost only 2 games in this playoffs. You could say they got lucky with injuries, whether it was Jimmy Butler, Donovan Mitchell, Tyrese Halliburton. That's part of the game. They've been the most dominant team in the league all year. When Hollinger warned that, look, this may not be an incoming age of parity. This could be the beginning of the Celtics dynasty for all we know. And remember, Boston made the finals 2 years ago, missed it last year. They're back. They're back again. This will be their second finals in 3 years. This could be the first of a long run, and everybody's going to be chasing the Celtics here for a little bit. That's also true. I would also argue that the East looks pretty settled for at least the foreseeable future. Again, we'll see what happens this offseason, but it's hard for me to envision anyone outside of the playoff picture breaking through these first 8. The 8 that made the playoffs this year. I feel pretty comfortable that even if Orlando took a step back, they will be in the playoffs again next year because, frankly, I'm not scared of Brooklyn as presently constructed. I'm not scared of Atlanta as presently constructed. Atlanta's funky, but I'm not scared of them. Not scared of Chicago as presently constructed. Charlotte's going to need some time. Toronto is probably not ready to make that step yet. Detroit certainly isn't. Washington certainly isn't. The 8 teams that made the playoffs, and frankly, maybe the 10 teams, Brooklyn, the only exception, the 8 teams that made the playoffs are probably going to be there for a little while, or probably be there again next year. Who knows for a little while, but we'll see what happens this offseason. A lot can happen, but we kind of know who the teams are that are going to be meaningful next season in the East, at least. And it does feel like if you can win a series, which the Magic can, they almost did this year, you do have that chance to do anything. Now, the West is a mess. Like, the West is super competitive. The Dallas Mavericks have 2 of the best guards in the league. There's a reason why people are talking about Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving as one of the best guard duos in league history. They're playing that way right now. They are very, very good. And at the end of the day, the Magic need to upgrade their talent. I know I've just kind of said, the Magic shouldn't go after Zach LaVine. There's going to be a point, we'll see what Franz Wagner ultimately becomes. We'll see what Paolo Banchero ultimately becomes. But the Magic are going to have to upgrade some talent. They're going to have to improve throughout their roster to get where they ultimately want to go. And their best players are going to have to play a lot better than they did in the playoffs. And Paolo played pretty well already. But that's the thing. I think despite how good Boston is, there is clear opportunity. Indiana can freaking, as much as I said Indiana struggled with pace, which I think they did, they can sit there and say, we had a lead in the last 2 minutes of 3 of the 4 games. We got swept, but it wasn't like we were blown out every game. They were more than capable of taking a few games off of Boston and probably should have won 2 of those games. That's how close the league is. That's how close things are in the playoffs. And the Magic have found themselves in that discussion. And so, yes, I'm not going to sit here and say the Magic are going to the finals next year. I will joke about it, but I'm not going to say that. But it's not so far-fetched. And that should be something that this season teaches everybody. The league is really close. The league does have a lot of parity. And anybody can beat anybody. Give them the right circumstances, give them the right team, give them the injuries, give them all of that. This league is as equal and full of parity as it's been in its history. And yeah, the team with the top record might still win the championship this year. Let's not pretend otherwise. But it's always going to be a fight. And the playoffs are always going to be a really difficult journey for whoever survives it. We will talk more NBA Finals on Thursday's episode of Locked On Magic. Tomorrow, we're going to get back to our Draft Tuesday. I'm currently writing my first mock draft. I'll tell you who I have the Magic picking and the players that I really think are on the target list. We'll get to that on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, find me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. Subscribe to the podcast and Apple Podcasts, search your TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all the fun places to podcast to your podcast-enabled listening device. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can follow us on Twitter at OMagicDaily. And for even more Orlando Magic content, including my player evaluations, I'm currently working through my player evaluations. That'll be on my Patreon page at the Orlando Magic Hub. That's patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. Now that you're done listening to me, be sure to check out the Locked On Sports Day 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube and now available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Day is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Day now available on the free Fire TV channels app. That's going to do it for me today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. For Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.